Hi, today we're going to talk about why you neglect yourself. And this is part of my complex PTSD recovery series. And this is a really big topic in complex PTSD that I don't think gets addressed enough. And there's some real brain reasons why this is happening. And so this is usually people really want to do behavioral activities and corrections on this. And while that can be helpful, that's not really the root issue. And so I want to talk about that. And with complex PTSD, there's lots of self neglect going on, whether it's neglecting hygiene, like brushing your teeth, washing your hair, bathing, to things like paying your bills, folding your laundry, um, exercise, giving yourself rest. Um, I made a list because I needed to make a list on this. Um, and then there's some big things in here with self neglect, like not going to doctor's appointments, not paying taxes. Not There's bigger things in here that the small self neglect will actually grow to bigger ones. But the root issue, brain function wise, is the root issue, right? And so this is not a you are failing, you're a bad person, you're broken. There is something going on in your brain, or hasn't yet begun to go on your brain, that is easy enough to fix. And once you know what it is, you can get busy doing that and then resolve this issue at the root, which then allows you to really take wonderful care of yourself, which is the beginning of tons of awesome things. And if you've got complex PTSD, you were actually taught the opposite, that the more you don't take care of yourself, the better that things will be. And oftentimes that's one of the, I'm going to explain it a little differently here in a second, but that's one of the things we can walk away with from childhoods where there's developmental trauma, neglect, and abuse. And so um, I'm Rachel McLeod. I am a mental health therapist and emotional wellness coach, and I specialize in helping people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And I'm really a specialist in complex PTSD. Um, I like to do a whole system rebuild and help walk people through rebuilding and rewiring their mind, body, and system for wellness and thriving. And so the brain has a beautiful process for this, and brains will do this beautifully theirself, but this process gets stopped and blocked. And so when that's happening, the wellness and thriving and all these beautiful things the brain could be doing is not happening. And so I really specialize in helping people get that process unblocked, because brains will do the majority of this work themselves, which is so much easier. It is so much easier like that. So that's what I do, and I do the brain work on that. It's much easier. I don't. One of my clients was like, "I love your videos because you just explain all these things and go into all these nuances." I don't do this in session. In sessions, we're just doing the brain work, and then they watch it happen, and then every once in a while we geek out about it. But I really like. I prefer to just do the work. I like to just get the brain healing and resolving, because then people tell me all about what their brain is doing and how awesome their brain is, and that they were doing this self neglect thing, and now they're doing this self care thing, and it's easy and fun. And there's a game you could play with your brain, just supporting your brain and watching it take off and make your life awesome, like it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so but that leads me straight into how we got here. And now I have to reorganize because I was just having so much fun with that. Um, okay. Um, this is, like I said, it's not a personal failure. This is a brain thing. This is a brain wiring thing. And when it's rooted in complex PTSD, here's what happened. Okay. During your developmental years, you were learning how to be a human. You were learning how to function as a human, or you were also learning how to malfunction as a human. And during that time, your interactions with your caregivers are wiring your brain for life. They're wiring your brain. This is how you do this. This is how you do that, right? Like, the little elephant, the stories on the elephants where the parents walk them through how to go to all the different places and get the different nutrients. And the child elephant remembers that all their days, and then they walk generations through this. We're doing this too. We're doing this in our interactions with our babies and our caregivers. And it's in the interactions. It's not necessarily as much in the words. It can be in the words, but it's not necessarily there. It's in the actual interactions that are taking place. If these interactions are taking place are abusive, that's going to wire a brain and a nervous system in a very specific way. If these interactions are neglectful, the parents are not attuning to the child and not responding to the child, they're neglecting those things, that wires us in very specific ways. If our parents were overwhelmed, suffering from addictions, physical illness, generational patterns of behavior, trauma, all of these things, they are teaching those things to us. They're teaching the ways of being to us in a subconscious way and through our brain's mirroring neurons. They're teaching our faces how to be. They're teaching us what to focus on mentally. They're teaching us what to expect. Okay. And this is how our brains get wired. So a lot of adults are coming out of childhood wired for self-neglect, wired to not even be able to see or find themselves. And so they're wired to not be responsive to their self. And it's almost like the brain has a blind spot where the self is involved. Okay, I have a piece of glitter here. That just might be part of my bling for today's session. So this blind spot that the brain has to the self is something that needs to be resolved. This is the work of healing from complex PTSD. It's one massive piece, and it's actually really where I spend all the time with people. Not all, okay. 85% of the time with people is to get the brain to see the self again, or for the first time. Depends on when the trauma began. Some people will have really great attuned times with their parent in childhood, and then something will happen, and then the parent is stressed, worried, overburdened, and the parent is no longer emotionally available. And so in that case, the child that nervous system did get some attunement, some responsiveness, and so that one we're not building from scratch. The parents really started that thing, and then whatever happened, that's when things went offline. And so we need to get the brain to remember the self. Other people were born straight into families where neglect was going to be a thing, and so we are wiring in the self for the first time. And a lot of times it's not just that the brain hasn't found the self. Sometimes people's brains have found things that are not the self and said this is the self. So there's wrong wiring in there. Like it's like the on switch is the off switch, and the off switch is the on switch. And so we need to get the brain to correct that for you, because that is not yourself. And you know this, but what matters, does your brain know this? The brain has a specific process to understand these things and then make corrections. And we want to walk the brain through that process, because you cannot be smarter than your brain. When you are focused, you can control your brain to some degree, but most of our life is spent doing in life, not controlling the brain. And so once we go into life, your brain is running things. And if your brain is confused about who is you and you is who and what, then you're gonna behave in ways that say that you're confused about who you are and what you need, and the self-care that's needed here. Okay, and so a lot of this stuff is happening as the result of childhood and neglect, abuse, right? If parents were attuned away from the child, were not attuning to the child, the parents were maybe focused on their own emotions, their own stress, their own needs. The parents' eyes were that direction. They weren't at the child. So the child learns to look at that stuff too, instead of the child learning to look inside at the self. And then that time looking into the self is how we find the self neurologically, where when the parents see us, it's activating, it's making valid and real who we are. And then if they're seeing who we are, they're activating it. And then if they're in response to who we are, all of a sudden we're learning, ooh, these things are important and are to be responded to. If parents see what's going on, they see it, but they don't respond, we can feel all this stuff, but we're learning that we're not to be in response to it. There's a lot of lessons happening in the interactions. And this can be really overwhelming. And right now, I want to just take a pause for parents, because when I talk about this stuff, you can already start shifting and looking at your children and how you're doing this to your children. I know, I'm sorry, and there's a correction for this, and you're going to need to look in. I need you to take your eyes back into your own experience right now, because the solution is there. You cannot fix this for your children if you don't fix it for yourself. If you don't fix it for yourself, you have to hope that somebody else will come along and teach your child to do it, because it needs to be mirrored and modeled. And if you can't do this for yourself, you don't get to do it for them. And the instant you start doing it for yourself, you're going to watch your kids do it too. They're mirroring neurons. They're first, they're going to be like, huh? And if they're old enough, they might be like, what are you doing? And if they're old enough, they're going to be like, you're so selfish. All you think is yourself. All good signs, okay? Because we have to begin this, okay? And guess what? You were meant to be selfish. We were wired to be wired to the self. We were supposed to know, we were wired in the beginning as babies to know what we need, what we want, to cry about it, to talk about it, to move about it, to be about it, to be in response to the self. That was a strong connection in childhood. However, when neglect shows up, we start to learn that that's not going to get us fed. And we actually need to start paying attention to the parent to make sure we can get fed. We need to meet their needs. Maybe don't cry so loud. Maybe be happy all the time, right? Maybe throw a huge, huge fit. I don't even feel like throwing a fit, but that's the only way I can get fed. So I got to throw a huge fit to get fed. We're learning tons of things here in these interactions. And so um, I totally, I went in, I don't know where I'm at anymore. But this stuff is so fascinating in here. And how the amount of things we have learned about ourselves, or learned that actually had to do with our early interactions, is powerful. And I think beautiful in a weird way, but that's why I'm in this field. I think this is wonderful. Not that we're harming each other, but how our nervous systems are learning about life, and how we're being equipped and wired for life. And also, one of the things here is that when our brain, and I do take people back to these early moments where they can watch this stuff, and your brain might already be doing it itself here, but we take it back and we watch this. And if your brain can stay regulated or get regulated while we're watching this painful scenes, your brain is learning all the things there. And it's like, why do we're still doing that? And this doesn't even make any sense. And oh my gosh, there's so much pain in here, and it's processing pain out. It's like, I thought that would be helpful. It's no longer helpful. This is the worst thing ever. Neglecting ourselves, and we want the brain to learn where we want it to watch the real scenes. And there's lots of ways to do this. We don't have to be so specific and dialed in this close. There's art and skill to this. But that's how the brain will make corrections. And so when we go back, we really want to be using an intervention that regulates the nervous system. It doesn't do a lot of good to, especially for people with complex PTSD, to come back and watch and feel all that pain moving through their system, and their mind-body system is not mechanically positioned. Their mind-body mechanics are not in a processing state. The mind-body mechanics are stuck in survival mode, because pain equals danger, right? And that's in the survival system. That's what pain equals. It equals danger and death. We're dying. We're gonna die. And that part of the brain is not a reasoning center. It's responsible for our survival, and it's serious about it. And so it can be really trigger fast reactive, especially with complex PTSD. And that's why we're sending safety signals at the same time. If we're going to run pain through the nervous system when we have complex PTSD, we want to also be running safety signals at the same time. People who don't have complex PTSD, who have people who were in response to them and attuned to them, they provided tons of care. So that nervous system is used to getting dysregulated and upset and coming into calm. Getting regulated and coming to calm, and it has the help and support it needs to do that, because the parent is attuned. They're saying, oh, it looks like you're really scared here, and let's stay together on this. And they're doing a lot of the things that nervous systems interpret as safety. And so we've got this safety dance going on. People with complex PTSD, they would get dysregulated. No one was attuned. Nobody noticed. Nobody wanted to notice. People moved away so they would be out of notice. And then there was no response to this. So the nervous system thinks, we're dysregulated, we're never going to get back, because there's not a pattern of you get dysregulated and you get regulated. It's not safe to be dysregulated. If I'm now, and then you go through your school years and your middle school years, and you might accidentally run into some things that will regulate your nervous system or calm your nervous system down, but create a lot of problems like alcohol and drugs and sex and scrolling and shopping. And the next thing you know, you're like, no, I got to go do that thing that ruins my life so I can feel better. But yeah, you do, because dysregulated for people with complex PTSD can be a problem that lasts for weeks and months, and it's expensive and depleted. And all of a sudden, your resources, your money, your energy, your health, your wellness are depleted, gone. I mean, you might even be in debt. And so it's dangerous to get dysregulated. But for people that had that had childhoods where they were in attunement and response, it's safe to be dysregulated. Well, I'll just regulate. Yeah, no problem. And I'll grow from it, because you actually grow from regulating after dysregulation. If you get dysregulated and then you get yourself into a regulated state, your brain processes all that data, all that information, right? And then you grow. That's how the same process we're using to resolve symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress is the same brain process for growth, maturation, and mastery of skill, and mastery of our environment, evolution, adaptation, flexibility. It's the same process. Once we go into that regulated processing state, which is a physical thing, it's not a mental thing. You can't mental it. You have to actually physically do it. The higher functioning parts of the brain, or the higher, I don't know, they're not higher functioning. They create higher functioning words that my brain doesn't want to word that. But that's the stuff that creates thriving for us. And you have to get all this information and data past the survival system. Well, if we can't get the survival system to chill and settle down, that information can't even get to the top of the brain, where magic will happen, and growth, and skill and maturation and evolution. This is why many people are still developmentally delayed. This is why many people are older but immature emotionally. And it's a brain thing. Okay? And this is the same reason why your brain cannot find yourself. It's not wired to you. This is why your brain doesn't see you. It doesn't know you. It doesn't know what you need. It doesn't know what you want. It doesn't know what you feel. And this is why you can neglect yourself, because your brain couldn't find you. It doesn't know that it's supposed to even be in response to you. Your brain doesn't even know that you're supposed to be attuned to yourself. Right? And so that's why we're going to help the brain find you and process you. And it does that through processing emotions. Emotions are energy, but it's all the data about who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you need, and what's going on in the world. And so your emotions are your information team. And I know they're not very reasonable, they're not very logical, they're not a logical energy, but they're full of data. They're also, they don't always feel fabulous, right? And so we don't like that. But this is our growth team. We also don't like going to the gym, most of us. We also don't like running miles, me. We also don't like those things, and they do good things that are wiresome. Okay, and now we don't all need to be running, but we all do need to be moving our emotions, because the information about who we are, what we need, is in there, right? And a lot of us, we don't have the nervous system support, the mechanical mind-body support of soothing and comfort and safety signaling to actually convert this into health and wellness. So we have learned that our emotions, our negative emotions, will crash us out, cost us dysregulation for months and days and weeks and years. So we're trying to stay away from them. But really, we're also staying away from ourselves. We can't get our brain, the brain food, the brain information about who we are. And so the brain remains blind about our needs. You can logically know your needs, but your brain doesn't know your needs. And so the one who's actually in charge of you meeting your needs doesn't even know what you need. You know what you need, and you're like, brain, we need to wake up and shower every day. And your brain, and then you go about it, and your brain, you're not. Your automatic functions are not doing it. You're snoozing your alarm because your brain's like, "Oh, we need to sleep. We gotta wake up and make everybody food first, right? Or we gotta wake up and oh my gosh, we're thinking about the day and we're crashing, right? There's a lot of the brain's not even thinking about the self yet, and this is because of conditioning. So we're gonna recondition it. We are going to get the brain seeing the self. We're going to get the brain to attune to the self. We're going to get the brain skilled up enough that it wants to sit with your emotions. You don't, right? You might want to, and your therapist say, you know, you need to feel your emotions. You don't need to feel your emotions. You need to process your emotions, right? But you do need to get the emotions in a position where your brain can look at them, kind of like there's a microscope, you know, and you need to get your brain, those emotions under that microscope long enough with safety signaling, with support and intervention. I have people use interventions. Um, so your brain can look at it while it's receiving the support to stay regulated because it's scared of all these emotions. It's not used to them. And it didn't get practice in early childhood to learn how that these emotions were valuable or helpful. Right? So we're practicing basic fundamental mind body emotion dance. Left, right, left, right. It's actually a little bit of left, right, but it's we need to learn how to put these in focus and then how to stay there long enough. And long enough in the beginning might be a couple of seconds. I promise you, I have people do work and we're in and out. I say, okay, glance at it, glance out. Okay, and then we're going to use an intervention while we're over in the Bahamas with our mentally, with our feet in the sand, and we're going to regulate. We're going to use an intervention. I'm modeling EFT, a quick version. Right? So that maybe that's all they can tolerate. This is new stuff, and that those 2 seconds are that's not very much in people time, but in electrical time, it's a lot of information, a lot of emotion that just got to the top of the brain for the first time ever. And then what's going to come back? What's going to happen again? We're going to do it again, and they're going to be able to sit there longer because their brain processed that emotion, learned it wasn't going to die about those emotions, and has a little bit more curiosity. It doesn't have tolerance yet to tolerate all of the information about you, but we're going to take whatever tolerance it has now because built a little bit more, and we're going to use that, and we're going to glance in and glance out. We're going to glance in, glance out, right? And then we're going to keep moving. And through this way, we get the mind body system connected with the self, and then tolerant of the emotions, and then tolerant of the self, and then interested in the self, and then attuned to the self, and then it runs that attunement process and that self response process on a subconscious level, and now it's yours. Now you can do it without thinking about it. Now you can do it with some skills or life happening, and you still stay attuned to yourself. And now you have a foundational skill in place. You're not limping around with like one of your legs are tied. You actually have something really foundational to human experience that that wasn't wired in childhood, but we're wiring in now. Okay, some of the easy exercises for this that I do not recommend complex PTSD, people with complex PTSD to do without using an intervention. People that don't have complex PTSD can manage this stuff. This stuff could crash your system if you're not giving your survival system support. They had a lot of attunement and responsiveness in early childhood. Their nervous systems already had the vitamins and minerals of vitamin attunement and vitamin responsiveness. They can tolerate this. We are actually remineralizing you with attunement and responsiveness, vitamin A and vitamin R in the relationally, right? So we're supplementing now. So while you do some of these mindfulness exercises, you're going to use your intervention a lot, all the time. I have people use it for up to 2 hours a day because we are doing a whole system. We want that brain to have enough support to rewire and to make some thriving and to create a massive foundational transformation that from there it will do itself and build up on. Okay, so we're gonna work this a lot. In my program, I have lots of specific ones that I found have worked best for complex PTSD and wiring to the self, and they're mindfulness. You got to put your mind on it, but they're also somatic. They're also mind body. We're also working through subconscious programming, and we're getting the brain to do this stuff, right? Your brain needs to do it. Your body needs to do it. Your subconscious mind needs to do it, not just you talking about it up here at yourself. Um, okay, so in early childhood, these experiences taught us beliefs that are currently active in how we behave now. The experiences, maybe nobody said these things to you, maybe people did say things like this to you. I'm sorry. The stuff I've heard in therapy that people are saying to each other is wild. Um, but it is a real thing, and I'm so sorry for that. But what we learned from the experiences, the interactions with our caregivers, were things like my needs are not important. My needs are not to be attuned to. Nobody is supposed to pay attention to my needs. My needs are not to be responded to. That's not something we do here. And these things teach us to play these games. We're gonna play the games of nobody respond to me. Matter of fact, if people do respond to me, something's weird about you. I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable. This is not a good fit. This is why people that have this will choose partners that are emotionally unavailable, because actually to be attuned to is so foreign to the nervous system. It's uncomfortable. It feels wrong. And that's some of that switched wiring. On is off and off is on, right? Healthy is unhealthy and unhealthy is healthy. We need to switch that wiring. So this makes it much easier. You automatically start enjoying people that can see you. You automatically start rejecting people who cannot see you, or putting them in, I will see you on the next round. Um, Things like that. Like hiccuped. Anyway, um, another belief that we have running through us, and these are not things that we want to just change by repeating affirmations. If you have complex PTSD, affirmations can shut your system down because it causes too much emotion to move through your system, painful emotion, conflicting emotion, and your system actually will use it to create more symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress because there's too much pain running through your system. We need to do affirmations, or I like to start people with just truth statements, um, what feels like true now. The statements of like, my needs are not to be responded to. And we're tapping or collarbone breathing or breathing, doing breath work with this, um, or some EMDR. And so we're going to hold the negative because we need to flush the pain out. But then we can do the positive with an affirmation, but I teach positive affirmations farther in the process, because the beginning parts of the process, we are just teaching the brain how to work with negative emotions and to actually process the negative emotions. And so we want to get a lot of negative emotions out of your mind body subconscious mind system, and we want to walk them through your brain's process of converting them, releasing what's no longer needed, and wiring them, converting them into the things like hope, courage, love, joy, passion, those sorts of things. Brains do that with negative emotions. I have videos on that. But we want to do more of that work so that your brain has an easier time installing positive beliefs and truthful beliefs, and it will actually do that by itself. So I don't even walk people through that unless they need it. But it's with all the painful negative emotions in there, there's no room for, and there's too much competition with the conflicting beliefs for the brain to install a positive belief. Now, if you don't have complex PTSD, not true for you. You can go play with your brain however you want to, rock on. But with complex PTSD, there's so much unprocessed pain. And that's why we have all these, where our life looks like it's in response to pain. Shutting down, avoiding, distracting, disconnecting, staying separate, withdrawing, overachieving, being highly productive, hiding inactivity instead of being a whole person, those sorts of things. Another belief that people can have from these early childhood experiences are, my needs are too much for others, and my needs cause problems for others. And so these are things that have to be resolved from the mind-body system. We have the behavioral level of us, we have the thought level, we have the survival level, and the subconscious mind level. This is where we want to target. Most therapies go on behavioral and thought this is not deep enough to get it so that you don't have to do it anymore. We want the subconscious mind full of all these healthy, accurate wiring to you, the self. And then what happens? Once your brain can process emotions, it's all learning about you. It's learning all about you. It's learning about what you like, what you don't like. It's learning how to put these thoughts and feelings into words for the first time. Once this stuff gets past the survival system, it goes to the part of the brain that timestamps it. The first time your brain will understand what timeline this was. That's why people with complex PTSD have a lot of material in the space from what happened then and what happened then and what happened. Their brain doesn't know what belongs here. So we're getting to walk the brain through its process of sorting out this stuff and getting organized so that's only showing up what is actually here. It's only giving you information for this. It's also going through the word center part of the brain. It's the first time this energy, this emotion will have a word, right? And that we want to do that 10 times. We want so that the brain, so that this thing moves so much faster and better. And now you can actually tell people how you feel. You can tell people what you think. You can tell people what you know. You can tell people what you want. And then from there, there's so many brain things that happen. Brains start to automatically shift your boundaries. Your brain automatically starts to be in response to you. Your brain automatically starts letting you know what you like and what you don't like, and it knows this information is important. It starts like collecting a little area. Oh, she likes this, she doesn't like this. Oh, he likes this, he doesn't like this. I like this, I don't like that. I like this. And then from there, it makes stuff. It says, no, thank you. Yes, no, thank you. No. Before we're just like, okay, passive, right? So, so how we fix this problem is we really help the brain find you. And then we help the brain wire all that stuff in and process those emotions so that it can find we wire you in, learn who you are, respond to you. Your brain will be one of the first things responsive to you before your whole life changes. Once you're responsive to you, then other people are watching, they're like, oh, they're learning how to be in response to you. If you're unresponsive to you, everybody else is learning, oh, don't be responsive to her. That's not what we do here. Because you're not in response to you. And so we're teaching people our inner world by how we behave and how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. And so this resolving self-neglect and lack of self-care is massive for making your life wonderful. I can't say it enough. So that's what I wanted to share. And there's a little bit more process to that. I think I'm going to have to create another video about that. So, because I want to nerd out in there. But I want to invite you to try to enroll in my free program, Interventions for Inner World Transformation. So you can try interventions that actually send safety signaling to your survival system. This is the vital ingredient. I don't do any work with anybody who cannot support their brain to shift into a regulated state. And if you get this right, it happens quickly. The interventions that are my favorite take about 30 seconds to support that shift, or 2 minutes. And so, and a lot of processing and healing happens. And even just using this intervention plenty, you will watch yourself resolve so many symptoms. And when you have the intervention on board that works for you, I encourage you to try my program, Inner World Transformation. It's my process for walking people through this journey of healing and resolving complex PTSD. Many layers of complex PTSD, relationships, boundaries, self-connection, your subconscious programming, on and on, but in a very structured way that empowers people to do their own work. And you can get support and all that stuff, but ultimately I want you skilled up because you're going to be with yourself. And you're going to be the one that customizes all this stuff to you, and your brain will do that work for you. But anyway, wonderful connecting with you. Please like my video, share, and subscribe to me on YouTube. Wonderful connecting with you.